Hello and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, wait, let me fix my mic. There it is. It sounds louder now. How's everybody? How was your weekend? Welcome to the Xbox Lunch Break Special. I'm your host, Mr. BoomStick XL. Now, listen, I know that this little podcast is up against a behemoth known as the Game Awards nominations. Listen, we're going to be here for about 75 minutes. Fuzzy and I, we have two massive topics to get into. And if obviously people, mosey on in after it, I think it's like 20 minutes, 30 minutes at best. Because what are they going to do? He's not really, I think he gets on stage or in front of a camera and he talks about the nominations. Listen, we're not covering it live for a couple of reasons. One, there's been a lot of talk over the weekend, a lot of information. There was a Stephen Totillo sit down with Phil Spencer where he talked about licensed IP. I think that's worthy of a conversation because I have some thoughts and theories as to why I get it, but why I don't why I humbly disagree with it. And of course, Obsidian's Avowed. Now, we're going to talk about that. We got some new screens. Looks absolutely amazing. The fact that that game got some more time in the oven, I think, is going to really, really set it on a good course for potentially a Game of the Year nod. Definitely RPG of the Year for sure. But before we get to any of that, check out some new gameplay from one of my favorite games of the year. That is Black Ops 6 multiplayer. I want to say about 3/4 down through my third prestige, which hopefully by end of day I will have prestige for the going into my fourth time. And they got some new skins. I'm running around as a vampire chick. She is freaking awesome, and it's all I want to play. It's crazy how I haven't played Call of Duty in so many years, and now it has just got its hooks in me. And obviously, I'm going to play it up until Wednesday. This Wednesday is a big release, an Xbox exclusive release, no less, or a console release in Stalker 2. That is looking like it's going to be in the Game of the Year conversation. Now, I don't think it's going to make the quote-unquote cut for the Game Awards because, obviously it's an Xbox exclusive. Though if it was PlayStation, well, that's a horse of another color. Jeff would have moved some things as he's done before. He moves mountains. That man is very strong for a skinny guy. I got to be honest with you. He moves heaven and earth for anything PlayStation, but, it is what it is. Fuzzy Belvedere, how's everything, kind sir? How you feeling?
Oh, I'm feeling great. Glad to be here with you today. Man, it's been weird watching how social media, well, one, a lot of people are moving over to Blue Sky, but outside of that, just seeing how some of these convenient changes to the Game Awards always seem to happen when it's a game that he favors as opposed to something that the industry needs, like maybe new categories. Like, I don't know. I got my own little take on it. Not to slander those involved in the process, but it just seems like
we know who's in. Yeah, you can slander all you want, brother. Listen, the truth of the truth is, look, if you look at the list of so-called judges, they're all seem to be owned by IGN now. Like, it is very suspicious. I'm sorry, folks. I'm not putting on the tinfoil kufi for anything. I'm just here to tell you that it is what it is.
Yeah.
This year, one of the most stout opponents of consolidation is who? Head of IGN's review process, right? Dan Stapleton. He's gone out there on record multiple times about how he doesn't agree with consolidation, right? And all of a sudden, IGN is buying up all of these news places, right? All these websites. Very interesting stuff. And when you look at the list of people that are making these decisions, they all seem to be owned by IGN, or at least a good portion of them. Honestly, you don't got to be a detective to kind of put piece 1 with 2 and make it 3. I'm just saying, but it is what it is. Look, we are going to cover the Game Award shenanigans on Wednesday, and I have a very special guest who literally just confirmed that he's going to be joining us for the entire show, and that is my brother, Dirt Griggity. That's right. Dirt Griggity is going to be joining Kay Asante, Hargeet Chani, and myself And I'm going to reach out to Shan also, his partner in crime, because Shan, I mean, that guy's amazing. And listen, I got to tell you, this morning I was super busy doing some stuff in the house, and I listened to Dirt's both of his new the one man podcast he did was like an hour and a half. He had me rolling. Like, it's so freaking good. You definitely should check it out if you're not already subscribed to Dirk Griggity. But yes, he will be joining us on Friday, on Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. But listen, I'm glad to have you here, Fuzzy. Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, the weekend was a little bit on the hectic side. Next weekend's going to be even more hectic. But other than that, still having fun playing games. Kind of finally dived into Dead Island 2.
So freaking good. What do you think, bro?
I'm loving it. Like,
yes.
I like the crafting aspect. Like, a lot of the things that I loved about Dying Light 1 is pretty much in this. It's just that it's the environment. Like, oh, I recognize that from when I was out in LA. Oh, I recognize that from like in GTA and stuff like that. So there's some iconic places and things along those lines. But yeah, it's just so much fun just slicing through zombies, and the fact that they degrade over time depending on where you hit them, either slicing off stuff or just slicing through till it's basically the skeletal remains and stuff. But blowing stuff up, having water bombs, and then shock therapy with a blade that's electrified and stuff. Yeah, it's so much fun. Like, if you haven't played it yet and you got Game Pass, definitely fall into that game. It's a ton of fun. But
just out of curiosity, which character did you pick?
I think I picked Jacob. I think is his name for now. It's basically like the Lenny Kravitz looking guy.
Oh, that's who I picked. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I probably will be playing through this with a lot of the characters. Like, this is my first playthrough on it. I know I'm going to wind up going back because it's just so much fun. Like, I still love State of Decay 2. Like, I was playing that a lot last month. That's my like Walking Dead simulator kind of deal with building your own little community. But this is just more of like the, turn your brain off, just slice things, go ahead and do this side quest. And some of the side quests are so fun. Like, you got the influencer telling you to like knock bodies off the building or set them on fire.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, well, listen, it's folks, a fun time.
That's what it's all about, right? Playing games. Have fun playing games. It doesn't matter really what console you're on. Obviously, this is an Xbox show, and we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of some Xbox conversation. But again, get ready. 75 minutes. This is one of the shortest shows of the week. Wednesday, obviously, is a big day for Xbox. Big day for the developer of Stalker 2. And it's finally releasing. Right, it's releasing to the masses. It's coming into Xbox Game Pass day and date. If you want to support the dev, go out and buy it. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you how to spend your money. Mrs. Boom and I are supporting the dev, as I've said before. We are giving away 15 copies. Now, again, we're not giving away 15 of the $90 edition copies because we only have so much money, and we are a mom and pop organization. But we will be giving away the standard games, 15 copies of it, and we'll be doing that on Friday mornings, Breakfast with Boom, and it should be a lot of fun for sure. But listen, Fuzzy, I want to get into this interview with Stephen Totilo for Phil Spencer. Now, obviously, the Phil Spencer interviews, there were a couple of them. Obviously, the big one, when he basically mentioned that there is, potentially no red line in the portfolio, that obviously got a lot of people, talking in the industry one way or another. There was another interview with Rolling Stone magazine where he basically confirmed the handheld, but he confirmed next generation hardware as well. Again, I don't understand the narratives of no hardware for Xbox, or somehow Xbox is losing and somehow we're losing as consumers. I don't get that. But there was another interview with Stephen Totilo. Now, Stephen Totilo is a prominent member of the journalistic community, whether you watch his stuff or you don't. He's been around for many, many years. And one of the big aspects of this interview was the conversation, Fuzzy, of licensed IP. Now, we currently know that they have licensed Blade from Marvel, which is being done, and that is looks that look again. We only got a chance to see some CG of it. We haven't seen any real gameplay. We've seen some stills. It's a third-person action adventure game set in France that is going to be about Blade. That has me very excited. I don't know if we've ever had a Blade game. If we had, I don't remember it. And I can tell you, with some of the stuff that's going on with Mahershala Ali and Marvel's telling or retelling of Blade, it has me very excited. And of course, Indiana Jones, which I got a chance to preview a couple of weeks ago. It's coming out on December 9th. The game is solid. It looks great. It feels like you're playing a film. It has everything any Indiana Jones fan could possibly want. And I would imagine that these Disney-owned IPs, because obviously one is Lucasfilm and the other one is Marvel. I totally get that these are expensive. And in this interview, and I'm going to pull it up in a second because I kind of want to just drop this onto you, and then I'll read some quotes from the interview. Any deal with a third party like Microsoft, PlayStation, or Nintendo with an entity like a Disney, right? Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be Disney princesses. It could be just Disney owned. And Disney owns Marvel. They own Star Wars. They own LucasArts, which, of course, includes Indiana Jones. And these things aren't cheap. When Spider-Man 2018 came out for PlayStation, and that's obviously an exclusive, or was an exclusive, now it's available on PC. Marvel was getting, or Disney was getting 25%. And one of the things that we learned that was very interesting during the Spider-Man 2 release was that they've upped their now, intake to 35% rather than the old school 25. And specifically for Spider-Man 2, and this is where it gets expensive, folks, is for every Spider-Man 2 that was packed in with a PlayStation 5, Marvel had it in the contract that they were getting 50% of the game that's in there. Not 50% of the sale, meaning not 50% of the PlayStation 5, but 50% of the Spider-Man game that was in the box. And as you know, the Spider-Man games, Spider-Man 2 that was in the box of every PS5 equated to about $50. It wasn't the full price if you went out and bought the game separately. It's a cheaper take home for Sony, right? So it's $50. Sony got 25, Marvel got 25. That's a lot, and they sold a lot of those consoles, so you can imagine how much Marvel made. In this interview, Phil Spencer basically broke down, and again, I'll get into specifics. I do want to pull up the article, but I want to get your hot take on the idea of further because again, we've heard Phil Spencer talk about not being a fan of licensed IP or games being made that he doesn't own. This is one of the major reasons. I just want to start off with your thoughts on that.
Well, I can understand a standpoint from a company standpoint. You're not going to want to continue to share a big portion of the pie each and every time. Like, you already have to do that with the platform that you may put it on beyond your own. So whether it's on Steam, Epic, PlayStation, Switch, whatever, you're having to share a little less than the third in a lot of cases. So if you're partnering up with the license holder for an IP in particular, you're left with that 70% that you're probably going to split another, not necessarily 50% total, but like when you're paying them out of their cut out of the full amount and you already paid 30% to another platform, it leaves you with a little piece of the pie, and you're the one that's doing a lot of the work, a lot of the marketing, a lot of the advertising, a lot of the heavy lifting to get that word out. So I can understand from a business standpoint why it's probably preferred to stick with stuff that you own, because then you're either taking 100% of the pie home on your platform or the full 70 on other platforms. So I get it. But on occasion, it's probably a worthwhile thing just for, new eyes or new potential customers coming into your ecosystem, where you don't have to make every game a licensed IP, but I would say 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 at least would be a fair, assessment on being a worthwhile investment where you will probably get that return. Now, what they probably need to do to kind of like not have as much of the heavy lifting on their end would be to do collaboration type stuff, where much like they did with Sea of Thieves with the Pirates of the Caribbean. I think those are the types of situations where, because the primary game itself is your IP and you're just mixing in a story that's an additional IP, I think you could probably get away with them taking a lesser cut, or make out some sort of contract sharing program that works out where it's still in your favor. Maybe not as good as if you were just doing it solely on yourself, but still better than going out and making a whole game based around Pirates of the Caribbean or something to that effect. But I think just from being a consumer and looking at what interests me, I think it's still worthwhile them doing licensed stuff. Like, look at Forza Horizon, where they had the Universal Studio cars mixed in there. They had like the Fast and Furious cars mixed in there. So I think those types of IP mixings are to the good or to their benefit, and keeps your customer base happy, doesn't cost you as much as far as the share, and it expands possibly your audience, because there might be people that are on the fence and they're like, oh wait, Fast and Furious, that goes perfectly with an arcade racer, and then it'd be more likely for them to maybe give it a try in comparison. But I think I get his sentiment, but I still think it's a worthwhile venture. Just with you having so many studios in-house now, you don't have to make it like a full-on thing. 1 or 2 out of the many studios you have working on a licensed IP or doing some sort of collaboration, I think is a worthwhile thing. Like, imagine having it where there was an official Star Wars and Starfield crossover, or maybe even Star Trek and Starfield, or something to that effect. Instead of just making a Star Wars game, I think that would be a decent approach to at least look into. So that way, for moving forward, it's not as expensive or as small of a cut as they would like, in comparison to building a full-on game that's based around that IP.
And you know what? Great points all around. So I have the article I pulled up here. Now, this is the name of Stephen Totillo's website is called Game File. And again, like I said, I like Steven's work a lot. I read all his stuff. And this is one of those instances where I feel that this was a really, really good, especially if for this particular topic, it's a real meaty conversation to have. So I'm using, because again, you have to subscribe to Steven's stuff. I like it. But I'm not subscribed to it. So I'm going through WCCF Tech, who's been a bit questionable with their writings as of late, but I'm using it, so I want to give credit where credit is due, because that's what we do here. Again, I pulled the article specifically from WCCF Tech. It was written by Alicio Palumbo. It was posted on November 18th. Obviously, that's today. Well, interestingly enough, the title of the article says Phil Spencer would rather revisit owned IPs rather than rely on more licensed games. And I have a thought for that. And a bit of criticism from Mr. Phil Spencer. I'm going to tell you why in a second. So, in this interview, and the opening piece of the article says Microsoft's gaming CEO Phil Spencer was featured in several interviews last week. In the second half of the chat with GameFile Stephen Totillo, published over the weekend, the executive said that he would rather revisit some of Microsoft's many owned intellectual properties, IPs, rather than on licensed games any further. Okay, so I'm going to read you 2 quotes from Phil, and then we're going to get into my I think pointed criticism, but well worth it for the conversation. This is what Phil Spencer had to say. I'm not the biggest fan of in quotes, of making licensed games. It creates some complexities for us when we think about putting it into a subscription or streaming service. We've seen it in racing games that have to get delisted because you lose certain licenses. So I'm always very careful if we're going to take on a license, that we're doing it for creative reasons and that the team has a goal around what they want to do. And this is the second part of the conversation that's pretty good. I feel great about our partnership with Lucas and Disney. They've been good partners. We're obviously doing Blade with our Arcane Leon with them. I was just out there visiting with the team. I think what you see in Indiana Jones is a team that really loves Indiana Jones and that world. The story is, to me, one of the strongest parts of that game. The way you feel like you're Indiana Jones from the first-person perspective. So it's clear that it's something that they wanted to do. But for us, given the intellectual property that we have here, I'm a big fan of using the IP that we haven't even revisited. Okay, so here, folks, is my criticism for Phil and what he said. So I have been a fan of games like Banjo-Kazooie for years. I've been a fan of Killer Instinct. And if there is one particular thing that has been left out of what Game Pass needs, in my personal opinion, is both family games and fighters. Right now, you've heard me talk about this. I mean, please don't yawn on me if you've heard this before. But Killer Instinct had guest characters that they own. Now, one of the stories we did on Friday's Breakfast with Boom was the data mining that went on regarding Master Chief, Doom Guy, and Marcus Phoenix, all Xbox-owned IP going into Call of Duty Black Ops 6. One, it's brilliant because these guys are all dude bro shooter guys that belong in a game as popular and as good as Black Ops 6. But from a money perspective, it just makes dollars and cents fuzzy because everyone who is anyone is going to spend money to rock these characters. The same way they're done in Fortnite. When a new set of characters, like let's say the Ninja Turtles, come to Fortnite, everybody is dropping their money left, right, and center to get all 4 turtles, and they spend a bunch of bucks to do it. Now, some play through the battle pass if you can that way and get it, but most people just drop the money. I'm one of the money droppers because I don't have the time, right? So I'd rather just pay and get the character. So here's my criticism for Phil. This Activision deal has been done for a year, right? I know that they are still putting pieces together, but I've said this before, especially when you take a game like Killer Instinct. First of all, they are working on a Killer Instinct. At least that is the running rumor. Now, that particular game is something that in the 2013 release had guest characters like General Ram. It had the dude from the Battletoads. But I think that something like that could really benefit from tapping the vein of all of the ridiculous IPs that they have. Now, this, folks, is where I have criticism for Phil Spencer. Okay? It's not that he's doing anything wrong, but he just literally said in an interview that he wants to use more owned licensed IPs. And I agree that he should. I actually don't care if they don't team up with Marvel. I think that they should. I think that there is room on Xbox Game Pass for these licensed IPs. But I understand that it comes at a cost, especially if you're putting into the service. And I'll say this. I think Indiana Jones going to PlayStation is probably one of those bargain deals about getting it into Game Pass. I don't necessarily think it's only about, Disney threatened to pull it like MLB The Show. I don't think that happened at all, to be honest with you. I think getting it into Game Pass, because a lot of people are going to play through Game Pass. Now, people are going to buy the game, sure. People are going to buy it on PC, but maybe some people on PC are going to play through Game Pass as well. So it's going to be less sales. Well, if you put it onto PlayStation 5, there is no Game Pass. And anyone that plays on PS5 next spring is obviously going to have to pay $76.43 for the game and potentially $108 if they want the DLC, the extra $30 pack, which makes sense, right? Makes dollars, it makes sense. Everyone wins. Disney wins, they get their cut. Microsoft wins, and they're getting people to pay for their investment into this game, right? That's how it all works. But the thing that I have to say, even though, we've seen Fable came back, Perfect Dark has come back, there are a lot of IPs that I think that they're sitting on their hands. One of which, at least for me, and no one's ever going to get me off this hill, I will die on this hill, is Banjo-Kazooie. I don't understand how in 2024 it's so hard to just take what the original bones were and do what Capcom did with Resident Evil 2. Slap next-gen controls onto a game that already has bones. It's not hard to do. I'm not a developer, but you could put a small team or get a third-party team like the obviously Toys for Bob is my first choice, but you also have the team that's all ex-Rare developers that made Yooka-Laylee, right? That's a team that could easily do that. But that's not the only one. So in my notes here, folks, I have quite a bit of things that I'd love to see. Now, okay, so they have Activision. They own Activision, right? They don't want to license IP. I get it. You know what they could do? They could put a team together to either remake or relaunch something like Prototype. Prototype is exactly a Spider-Man game or a Venom game without having the license. You already own it. You don't got to do nothing with it. You simply got to put a team and go. Here's another one. Singularity. Now, this is a game that many people missed out on. Like, it is probably one of the best games during the Xbox 360 era that I can guarantee you never played. So my criticism for Phil is he's saying this, but I want to see what's being done. If the rumor about putting smaller teams together to bring back older IPs is a thing, then let's start seeing it, because there's another particular game. Now this is taking it way back, and I think that this game has legs because it was both multiplayer and single player and was brilliant. That's Crimson Skies. It had its own story. It was very Indiana Jones-esque, and it also had, which I played for hours, dog fighting with other people. Phenomenal. Again, there are so many IPs that you do not need to spend $500 million on to get a small team to work on. Put it into Game Pass. It's original IP. You own it. You don't have to pay any licensing fee, and you just go. Make original score music so you don't have to pull it off the shelf like you do with the Forzas, with the licensed music. Am I making sense here, Fuzzy Belvedere?
Yeah, and it's something that he said that he would rather do, but he's at some point going to have to, as the saying goes, crap or get off the pot kind of thing. So
yeah,
I would hope that, some of the energy that he showed at the original announcement for acquiring Activision, where, things like, Guitar Hero or Tony Hawk and stuff along those lines are in the consideration, although there is licensing involved with those as well. But there are so many other ones that are internal IPs that don't require paying a third party any portion of that, other than whatever platform holder you may choose to put it on, like something like Steam in that regard, where they would get a 30% cut. I think there is so much room for them to reach out and do that. Now, I know they're probably focused on what each one of their teams currently wants to work on. And I hope they're making the internal moves that are necessary to kind of get some of the I guess salt mine Call of Duty workers, back to working on games that they may prefer or may want to give a try as opposed to Call of Duty. I'm hoping that they can figure out a way to make that work, so that way it's not all hands on deck working on Call of Duty every year, year after year, year after year kind of thing. I would like to see some of those studios work, like you said, on something like Singularity or something along the lines of like what was it? Not Protocol. What was the one you just mentioned? The
Prototype.
Prototype.
Yes,
like, they definitely need to look at those, because like you said, if they're not going to license, well, they can't license a Spider-Man, at least at the moment, or Venom or something of that nature. You have Prototype that can be your go-to hero type of game or anti-hero type of game, much like the way PlayStation had with was it Infamous. So it's just something that they need to look at. I wish PlayStation would look at bringing back Infamous as well, but if you're not going to pay the licensing fees, definitely start digging through the crates, as they would say, with a lot of the IPs that have been collecting dust, with some of the companies that you've acquired that may not have gotten around to returning to some of those titles. Like we're still waiting to figure out what is going to happen outside of Fallout 76, as far as when will a Fallout 5 be seriously in the works, or is it something that is going to be backburnered because the continuation stuff, which I'm fully a fan of with Starfield, and then you got Elder Scrolls 6 that is the next big title from their teams that they're going to be working on. They're going to have to either figure out a way to grow the teams or be more agile, where they possibly take a smaller unit working on like a lot of the storyboard stuff, do a few of the prototypes as far as building a workable, playable build, and then figure out from there how to go about timing or ramping up things to make it so that way, well, okay, Elder Scrolls is starting to wrap up, or it's got like maybe a year or two left. We could start transitioning some people to start ramping up for Fallout 5 or something to that effect. So there's just so much IP that they own now that they have ownership of so many studios, and a lot of those studios had their own IP and whatnot. They got to figure out something. Partnering with a third party to do some of that stuff would probably be the quicker route, especially if these teams already have something in the oven now. But you got to figure out something, or maybe there's part of like Double Fine that wouldn't mind, reliving or possibly recreating, Banjo-Kazooie or something to that effect. They're good with platformers. They're good with storytelling. Maybe they figure out, well, what's a true storytelling platformer version of a Banjo-Kazooie? What that would look like? Or Toys for Bob, which they kind of spun off so it can be independent. Maybe they are, if they're not already working on a new Spyro, maybe a Banjo-Kazooie is the next one that you hire them for as well. So he has a lot of stuff he's going to have to figure out. I don't envy that position, because it's almost like you might as well just get the dartboard out and start throwing at the wall as far as which ones are, next in line, while they probably have the next 5 or 6 years of a roadmap pretty much already filled out, and what you could possibly squeeze in between some of that already that's in the works, and some of the stuff that you're planning into the next generation, like the launch lineup that, more than likely consists of some of the titles that we're looking forward to as is. So yeah, he's got to figure something out at some point.
I mean, listen, again, it's no real smoke for Phil. I like what he's doing, and their roadmap is ridiculous. We cannot argue that we are not going to be eating good in Xbox land for the next 3 to 4 years of what we know, right? It's literally been right there, put on a platter for us. June was a great representation of what Xbox is doing regarding first party. We're gonna be okay. We definitely are. But again, if he doesn't want to do license IP, outside of what he already has with Blade and Indiana Jones. I get it. It's an expensive undertaking. Totally get all of that, especially if you have to figure out the the ups and downs or the financials of putting it into your service, which of course they own. But they have a lot of opportunity. And one thing you said, this is what's interesting. Like, I still have every disc for Guitar Hero. Like, I literally own everything. And they just released a new guitar, which I bought. I think it was PDP that did one with the collapsible neck and everything. It's dope. So I went out and bought it. And, well, we don't have a new guitar here. We don't have a new Rock Band. But he has specifically said the words Rock Band. I mean, Guitar Hero. Yes, thank you for the correction. So, I mean, if he's saying it, there's got to be something there. Now, again, I don't know when we're going to get this quote unquote onslaught of backwards compatibility, and I don't know if it would cost anything to put the games as is into the service. I don't know, because you own them, and I don't know if that requires additional licensing fees. But if you own the disc, you should be able to play it. At least that's my take anyway. It can be played on an Xbox 360. It cannot be played on an Xbox, Series X. They need to fix that. Now, again, I know licensing fees are expensive, but you own these games, and you said it. He literally mentioned Guitar Hero in one of his interviews. If you're talking about it, you obviously want that to happen. I think it should. But that's not the only topic of the day, folks. Look, at the end of the day, Xbox gamers are going to be doing and eating well and playing lots of games. And just look at what they have for the remainder of the year. You still have, this week, you have Stalker 2, right? Right after Stalker 2 releases, you got Flight Sim. And a couple of weeks later, you got Indiana Jones. I mean, that not a really, really bad way to close out your year. Now, maybe one or all three of those games aren't your bag, but you cannot argue the fact that you got Call of Duty in your service on top of Hellblade 2 and a bunch of smaller RTS games that maybe don't matter to you, but certainly matter to somebody else. And there's no doubt that Game Pass delivered in 2024. It just did. And there's still stuff happening. Again, we don't know everything that's happening, but there's still going to be stuff for the remainder of the year. Again, it's one of those things, not enough time for me personally to keep up with all the Joneses, but there are a lot of games. Fuzzy, I want to get into Obsidian's Avowed. This got a delay. This was supposed to release this year, and it got delayed, and I think ultimately it was the right move. When you look at when it was going to be released, it was going up against Indiana Jones, Stalker 2, and Flight Sim. 3 big games in their own rights. Where does this game have time to breathe? Where could it have done numbers? Where could have people had time to enjoy it when there are so many other games? You got to think about this. They're partner games as well. It's not just Xbox first party. You're talking about so many other games. I mean, Dragon Age. Dragon Age is probably going to be now, again, depending on whether you find that there's controversy. I personally don't, but that's probably going to be RPG of the year. Now, maybe it doesn't get the nod because the DLCs are now part of the Game Awards, and maybe Elden Ring, the DLC that gets the nod because that is a phenomenal piece of content. And you know what? It should be recognized. It should be in its own category. Personally, but that is a horse of another color, and we'll talk about that on Wednesday. But we got some new screenshots of Obsidian's Avowed. One of the things that happened last week, among many things that happened good for Xbox, you had the deep dive into Indiana Jones. You had you had a lot of really cool things happen for Xbox.
Yeah.
Well, we learned that there's a $30 upgrade that has become standard fare with Xbox first party. It happened with Call of Duty. It happened with Starfield. It's now happening with Obsidian's Avowed. This makes sense. This makes sense because what it does is it recoups the money that's being lost by people that are going to play it in the service. And the one thing that we've learned about consumerism, I think it's very safe to say, without being a branded an expert in economics, is as a consumer, if you are presented something quote unquote for free, because most people when they talk about Game Pass, like, oh, I'm getting in my service free, even though they're paying $20 a month. That's the mentality, and they're not wrong for that.
Mm-hmm.
They are more inclined, like, oh, wait a second, there's a $30 upgrade. I play 5 days early, and I'm getting this stuff $30 because I'm getting it for free. Call of Duty, right? Like I had no idea I was going to be more infatuated with the multiplayer than the single player, right? But I dropped my $30 down the second it went live. I'm like, well, it's in the freaking service. Why not? I'll get the Vault Edition, and it wound up being a phenomenal investment, right? Like I'm more happy than ever. Same thing with Starfield. Like, I mean, I got a chance to review it, so I got the copy early. I got the deluxe edition, but if I would have just been playing it through my service, I would have gladly spent the $30.
Yeah.
Right. That's just standard fare. So, more interesting reveals is the fact that this is not just going to be available on Steam and on Xbox. It's also going to be an Activision service, which that's freaking pretty crazy because a lot of people look. I don't tend to understand the mentality of launching, of playing games through a launcher. I don't play on PC, but the people, especially the PC crowd, very loyal to their launchers.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that, some people will play Steam because Steam is the best place to play. That's what they're saying. I couldn't tell you because I don't play on PC, right? But on the Activision launcher, a lot of people play there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people like playing there and they don't want to launch anything else. And the fact that this is now going to be a part of that is a big deal. This is a new move. It's a genius move, in my opinion. But again, every time I see Avowed in one way or another, Fuzzy, I'm like, this is going to be a phenomenal Obsidian joint. Mm-hmm. And I can't wait. Let's get your thoughts, man.
I'm also looking forward to it. Now, the key thing with the $30 upgrades, they've been doing this for a while now, and it's worked out to, at least in my standpoint, it's worked out to my favor as far as with Starfield. I love the art book as far as that you get where you can see some of the concept work. You got like an extra skin for some of the weapons as well as for the spacesuit. And there were other than like the early day access, there were a few other perks that I can't remember right now, but it also gave you the first DLC, which was, Shattered Space. So I love this concept of what they're doing. I know some people don't like necessarily having to pay extra to play early, but when you get like the extra cars in like a Forza Horizon 5, like with the car pass, you get early access, you get, usually the DLC that's planned or the announced DLC that's planned already included in that price. I think it's well worth it. Avowed, I believe it's doing like some customization for your companion characters, as well as, I don't know if they have like a DLC thing announced just yet, but I know you get the early access. So it's something that I'm more than likely going to wind up doing anyway. When it comes to Indiana Jones, I'm doing the upgrade. Although I have a gut feeling shortly after the holiday or maybe during the holiday, if they do a sale on the actual price of the game, I'll wind up picking it up that way. So I'll pay the full $30 for the upgrade and then, catch the balance for a little bit less than what it would normally be with the Game Pass discount. But I'm the key thing with Avowed, I'm not the biggest into like fantasy RPGs. Like this will be when Elder Scrolls come out. This will be one of my first times actually going into that space kind of thing. But I loved how Obsidian did Outer Worlds. Looking forward to Outer Worlds 2. Love their storytelling approach on things. Also had a really good time with, I think it was it the Stick of Truth or was it the other one? What do you call it? South Park game that Obsidian worked on way back.
Oh, the butthole one, yeah.
Oh yeah, true but whole or something like that, or fractured but whole.
The fractured butthole.
But I love Obsidian's approach on storytelling and this choices or decisions you get to make, which a lot of games that give you choices don't always have like a consequence, and theirs seem to have a consequence, or you can literally, what do you call it, like burn bridges with some of the characters, or seriously hinder your outcome, but it allows you or gives you the freedom to make those choices either way you want. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. Every time they show, whether it's screenshots or more video, it's looking more and more polished. I'm loving the biomes that they've shown for this game, all the different landscapes that you'll be able to go through. The fact that it rewards you for exploring. There'll be shortcuts and hidden caves or hidden dungeons that you'll come across on occasion, and that all depends on some of the decision making you make, or who you have in your party as far as your companions and things like that. So there's just so much to this game that I'm looking forward to. Never really played Pillars of Eternity, but having it where there's already a lore built with the story behind it, as opposed to this being like a brand new IP per se. I mean, it is technically, but it's based in that same realm for Pillars of Eternity. I'm curious to see how this pans out, because a lot of people that have played Pillars of Eternity always make mention of how dark of a it's not lighthearted basically, although Avowed looks to be a little bit more lighthearted, but it does have, at least from what the devs say, some areas that are not going to be as lighthearted as far as your choices, whether you let somebody live or die or what have you. And I think there's one of those things where you can, that they've shown a little bit of like the path, as far as like if you choose to believe somebody, as far as that they kill these other individuals, or do you then take them out because they have a bounty on their head, or something to that effect. I'm curious to see how all of that plays out. But Obsidian have been great. They're like what I would say the equivalent of Insomniac for Sony. Not saying that they've completely carried the series launch, but they've probably been the most productive as far as having the most amount of games from start to finish from acquisition. And each and every time they deliver a fantastic experience. I know some people didn't necessarily care for Pendament, but it is a fun historical based type story that I think if it had more of a RPG esque type look to it, or third person perspective, it would probably have done a heck of a lot better. But it was still a good story, and still a good journey as far as going through that game. But Avowed, I think, is going to be like one of their shining moments, because little do people know, there was a Stormlands game that was pitched for early Xbox One, where some of the similar things that you see in this game were there. It's just that it had more of a multiplayer and co-op element to it. So if this is more of like the singular story, somewhat like an offshoot from the Pillars of Eternity type of deal, I'm real curious to see if this is something that they continue as well, like they did with Outer Worlds, where we have Outer Worlds 2 hopefully coming from them next, unless there's some secret project Fallout related possibly in between.
You never know.
But Obsidian have been great, and they're the ones that are most known for like the best Fallout, as far as Fallout New Vegas and things along those lines. So yeah, this game I think is going to have a special place in the series console, I wouldn't say history, but as far as the lineup and stuff. And I think people will be looking back and still playing this and doing much like they do with like Elder Scrolls and Skyrim with mods and things along those lines. So I'm really looking forward to this. Was it February? I think they have this coming out.
Yes,
So
been confirmed too. And again, it's you're not wrong. This is, again, if you played the Outer Worlds, and you probably should, one of the things that jumped off the page for me is it felt very Mass Effect-esque, especially with your characters. With the crew that you went out with. There were missions where you had to do things for them. You got a chance. They were personal. It felt really good. They tell amazing stories. Knights of the Old Republic 2, Obsidian, right? I know it's 150 years ago. I totally get all of that. But that game was revered. Some people enjoy that better than Knights of the Old Republic by BioWare, right? The OGs. Now, that's a debate that we're not going to have here, but I played it. I loved every second of it. And again, I've said this before. Todd Howard, do not hate me for saying this. I apologize in advance. My favorite Fallout of all time is New Vegas. It just is. It is a phenomenal title that tells an amazing story. That's part of the Fallout franchises, and I wish they would bring a sequel back. That's just me. The next Fallout, if we don't get Fallout 5 until I'm 60, I'm gonna be pissed. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you, Fuzzy Belvedere. But if you want to, circumvent my hate for not having a new Fallout, give me a new Fallout New Vegas. Not a problem. It's all right. I'll wait until I'm 60 to play, even though I don't know how. Again, hopefully the world is even here at this point. But I'm very excited for this game, and it's interesting how many games they have coming out in 2025 that are so big. It's wild. And this is going to come out in around some other big games for Xbox in 2025. You have Fable, you have Doom, you have the next Call of Duty. South of Midnight is another one. I mean, it's mind you, there are still, according to some sources, Matt Booty's got a couple of tricks up his sleeve. I did a video on that last week. Go definitely check that out, where we talk about that specifically. Xbox is going to be hitting in 2025, and I think Sony is not. Sony's biggest games, unfortunately, are all going to be Xbox-owned IP. Think about that for a second. Again, no slander, but it's the truth. I mean, well, listen, we're being truthful here.
Yeah.
Their three biggest games next year, Doom Dark Ages, the next Call of Duty, and Indiana Jones. Now, if you add, let's say, for instance, Starfield or Forza Motorsport to that, their whole lineup is Xbox games? Yikes. Like Xbox-owned IP? I mean, Xbox been making money hand over fist because PlayStation gamers are starving. They're starving right now for new content, and they're going to get it in the form of, well, potentially those 5 games. Look, we do have one smaller topic that I wasn't going to talk about, but I just have to at this point because, you know what? Before I get into my spiel, so to speak, let me thank Scott Gamer Dude, who drops a very generous $2. In fact, the first super chat of the day, he says, "Hello, Boom. Do you think Sony will ever license IP from Xbox? Hell would have to freeze over there, kind sir. I don't ever think that's going to happen. I just don't. They're just very old school, and that's why they're dragging their heels with games coming to Xbox that are not being forced. Meaning, like MLB The Show literally told Sony, "Hey, listen, if you don't make this multi-plat, we're pulling the license," and they had no choice. And obviously, even though it's not published by Sony Interactive Entertainment, it's still a Sony Interactive Entertainment first-party developed game. And that's MLB The Show, and that happens to go into Xbox Game Pass every year. It does not go into their service, which again is so wild to me. But so I waited to tell this particular story, Fuzzy, and I didn't send the show notes, but I'm gonna lay it out, so to speak. So Scott asks if Sony would ever license an IP from Xbox. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But the question is when will Sony put more of their games onto Xbox, and what will those games be? Well, we have some evidence that is going to force that conversation and force the issue. So we obviously know Concord was a complete flop. $400 million bath, and they have to make that money back. Astrobot, my top 3 of 2024, one of my favorite games this year, and I'm an Xbot. Absolutely loved every freaking second of Astrobot on the PS5. There was nothing outside of that last hidden bunch of levels that I just want to give the finger to, and I won't do that live on the air. I just want to give those levels the finger because those are preventing me from getting the platinum, and they're just they're just ridiculous. There are no checkpoints. You have to get all the way to the end, and they are ridiculously hard. So I was like, Fangul, that's it. I'm not doing it. Right. So fine, whatever. One of my favorite games of the year. But like many PlayStation first-party IPs, the fan base failed this game. 1.5 million copies sold. I'm sorry, folks. I don't care how you try to twist it, what virtual gymnastics you're going to try to do with flipping and rolling left, right, and center. You're not going to win me on. That's a win, Boom. That's a W. It's an L, and it's an L for PlayStation fans. Shame on you, because I bought it, loved it. It's in my top 3 of the year. One of my favorite platformers in freaking years, right? And I'm an Xbox. So I did some digging, and I'm like, Lego Horizon came out, and it literally came out to a whimper. Like, we have no numbers. Well, we have numbers. We got some numbers. But what we don't have is the sales numbers on Switch and on PlayStation. Now, I did read somewhere where the forecast for sales on Lego Horizon on PS5 are starting to hover around Concord. Concord sold 25,000 copies. That's it. If that's the case, that's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So I said this even before the game launched, Fuzzy, I really believe that the Switch players are going to go out and buy this game in droves. It's a Lego game. Lego games are freaking awesome, especially if you have small kids, right? Now, maybe, and again, I don't know if Lego Horizon is going to resonate with the Switch crowd, because they don't really know who Aloy is if they're Switch players. But the fact that I like her as a character. Like, I know people get on me about that. Like, oh, Boom, how do you like her as a character? I do. I loved the first one. Aloy, I thought, was a brilliant freaking character. I didn't like what they did with her in 2, which is why I never finished 2. But I absolutely loved Horizon 1 from start to finish, and the DLC was phenomenal. But I think Switch players will certainly step up to the plate and buy more than the PlayStation players, which, again, it's first party. You should be ashamed of yourself. So these are the numbers I'm talking about. Now, Steam, it released on PS5, Switch, and Steam. You're laughing. Don't make me laugh. I'm trying to be a professional here, goddammit. So I have the numbers, folks, and they're just not good. Right now, I literally just ran the Steam DB right now, live on the air. There are 185 people playing. The last 24 hours, there was 372 people playing. The all-time peak for a PlayStation first-party multiplat that somehow skipped Xbox had 602 players. Fuzzy. 602 players for its all-time peak 4 days ago. So I was like, I heard, I'm almost positive I heard Dirt Griggity mention it. So I went and did some digging. And I said, you know what? What's an old Lego game that doesn't have a character attached to it that we can use for comparing apples to bananas?
Mm-hmm.
So I went and pulled the numbers for a Lego City Undercover. Okay? And this game, if you could look to see when it came out, I don't have it. Let's see. When did it come out? Okay, so I have the numbers here. Holy cow. It came out April of 2017 is when this game came out.
Wow.
It's old. So if we're comparing apples to bananas, right? Just for conversational pieces, which is why I believe Sony has not only released another bomb, but unfortunately the Xbox announcement that a lot of PlayStation players are dreading is going to happen sooner than later. So playing in the past 2 hours of a game that released in 2017. Do you know how many players were there? Would you like to know, chat? Would you like to know, Fuzzy Belvedere? 235. Right? In the 24-hour peak, 24 hours, 410 people played a game from 2017. The all-time peak, and again, it's not big, 804. So when you compare apples to bananas, Lego Horizon is not doing really well. And you know how we know it's not doing well? Because Sony ain't talking. That's why. And it is why you're going to see a couple of things happen. I don't know if Sony can keep taking these kinds of losses. I don't know how long it's going to be before they make some changes at leadership, specifically with Herman Holtz. Because again, if you look under his tenure, you got Concord being compared to their Star Wars. That's not good, right? Astrobot, and again, Astrobot's phenomenal, but it only sold 1.5 million. Where are you, PlayStation fans? Where are you? I bought it, loved every second of it, put over 40 hours. I'm not sorry that I did. One of my favorite games of the year. Where are the Sony players? Nowhere, right? And here's another one. Where are the Sony players? I know they're not on Steam. I know they're not on Switch. Where are they putting this game up? It's a first-party IP. It's one of the few that they had released this year. And it looks really good. Now, I'm going to buy it. I'm not buying it on PS5. I'm going to buy it on the Switch during Black Friday, and I'm going to enjoy the heck out of it. I'm going to play with Tyler. I'm going to buy a copy for him and a copy for me. I cannot wait. But let's talk about this being another part of the bridge that's being built to having more Sony games come over to Xbox, because they can't live like this.
Yeah. I was thinking about this a while ago, and Griggity, I think, nailed it on the head as far as like, this isn't really a known IP for those that would be into Lego games in general. Like in the grand scheme of things, typically, whether it's DC characters, Marvel characters, Star Wars, what have you, Lego usually seems to do best when it's that type of IP. And, PC players will buy it, whether it's for the adults that enjoy some of these Lego games. Like the Star Wars game is pretty fun. Yeah, it looks silly, whatnot, but it's still fun. And they have some humor in there that might go over the head of most kids, kind of thing. But when it comes to Aloy, unless you're on PlayStation, you're probably not as familiar. So, yeah, they've sold a decent amount of, Horizon, Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West on Steam, but it's not really the area where I would expect Lego Horizon to do well. I always kind of thought that Lego Horizon would do best on Switch, even more so than on PlayStation itself. But this is another example where people clipped me before, and I guess it seems like Sony is actually considering putting Astrobot on PC now. I said
They
it was
should, though.
Yeah,
They
I said
should.
it was a dumb idea for them not to, and not that you would have this type of result. I think Lego Horizon having mixed reviews, because it didn't get 9s and 10s. It's some people are like 5, some people are like 8 or 9. So it's mixed reviews for the most part. And with that being said, Steam is I wouldn't say they're all about reviews, but if you're getting mixed reviews, chances are it's going to be avoided like the plague, even before you have people like, oh no, it's actually fun. Don't listen to, these media outlets. Like Steam will usually, they're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt unless it's that type of game that appeals to a PC player in general, kind of thing. But I thought it was weird for Sony not to put this on Xbox, considering that they're putting it on Switch, but I understand, they they'll be cozy with the people that they stabbed in the back or that stabbed them in the back for them to even exist, kind of thing. If you know the story about Sony and Nintendo way back in the day. But all things considered, I didn't expect that this thing would do big numbers, but I didn't expect they would do this bad. Like, this is less than what we saw as far as Concord, given it's a totally different genre. I know it's not the type of game that even PlayStation players are convinced is a good game. Like, I think Sony is spent so much time making this premium experience that when a game doesn't give you that visual of a premium experience, like a Lego game does not look like a premium experience, their players aren't going to, buy it up in droves. And then with Astrobot, yeah, 0.5 million isn't bad if it was like a smaller studio game, but when this is like a first party title and it was a sequel to a game that was included with every PS5 that was sold as a tech demo for the DualSense, you would expect with 60 million plus consoles out there, maybe they get the 10% threshold. Like that would have made more sense, where if they'd sold 5 or 6 million copies before they do like a pack in or something like that, that I think would have been, I wouldn't say more acceptable, but more respectable considering how many consoles are out there. But to only do 1.5 million, and then also when you look at things like Stellar Blade, which was another game that was propped up, only doing like about 1 million, it makes you wonder what they're doing wrong, or who they have looking at their roadmap or their upcoming games and making the decisions to greenlight or to cancel certain games. It seems like whoever that individual, whether it's Herman Hulse or somebody else, they need to go. Because I always look back at like when Jaffe, and I don't always agree on some of his takes on things, but when he was talking about how Sony is going to be in a world of crap when Connie Booth left, I think we're starting to see maybe having somebody that was like your go-getter as far as getting these studios to release games in a timely manner, get the games that players wanted, and making sure they reach the finish line. I think when you get rid of somebody like that has that eye, let's say, like King David says, you're not going to have the best of times afterwards, because it's going to take you a while to find that next individual that has that eye or has that outlook on things of what games are going to be worth their investment or be successful. Maybe if we find out later on in a tell-all book, I don't know if Jason Schreier would be the one writing it or somebody else, but if it's one of those things where Connie Booth is like, yeah, this game Concord, it ain't it, and they probably like, oh, we won't have that toxic negativity here, you get out type of thing. And it is what it is. And now they're taking that was it almost $500 million bath on that game. So I don't think Sony is going to quite port things over to Xbox just yet. They got to get Nixxes to be a bigger team to be able to work on multiple titles to port to PC. Like, I think their biggest thing now moving forward is to ramp up Nixxes, so that way they're either working hand in hand with their studios to have things released day and date on PC, or at least start getting a lot of that back catalog that they want to work on up to speed. So that way it's not like we're waiting until next year for the next whatever PS title comes to PC, which I was under the impression after the God of War, or maybe it was Horizon being remastered again, that it would wind up being GT7. But if it's not GT7 and it winds up being another title or a redo of The Last of Us 2, which would be completely stupid in my opinion, but it just feels like they need to take a step back, look at the bigger picture, realize why things are only reaching like a threshold of maybe a mill and a half copies when they should be reaching 10, 20, 30 mil like they were when they had the PS4. Considering some of these games are still playable on the PS4, considering half of their player base is still on PS4, and they just released the Pro. I don't think many PS4 people are going to upgrade unless maybe they were a PS4 Pro person. Then they'll go with PS5 Pro possibly, but I think they kind of priced themselves out of that market to some extent. But Yeah, it just feels like Sony has kind of lost their vision on what a good game is, or what at least a good game in their player base's eyes. Because it seems like they've got them trained where if this Lego game isn't a third person perspective, over the shoulder, story narrative driven kind of game, yeah, they ain't touching it. And that even means for those that upgrade to PC or are also on PC as well. So they got to figure something out and figure it out quick.
Well, I mean, look, perfect example of why things are going to change quicker than a lot of PlayStation gamers are going to like. Look what happened with Death Stranding. Death Stranding comes out and it's shadow dropped, right? There, no fanfare. Literally, I wake up to a DM from Wandering Dutch, and I'm like, no, it can't be. So I go to my Xbox and I'm like, boom, 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 boom. Holy shit. Well, there it is. $20. Yep. Buy. It's been number 1 and number 2 in multiple regions. And again, I know there's a lot of pushback on what I'm about to say. And I'm like, whoa, boom, because that's how they sound, right? This is they sold the IP back to, it doesn't really count, 505 games. Interestingly enough, you're wrong. Because when you turn on the goddamn game on your console that says Xbox, the first freaking screen that you see says Sony Interactive Entertainment in white lettering with a black background. That is not false. That is not doctored. That is a reality. So in one of the leaks for Sony's show, which Jeff Grubb said, don't expect much. Jeff has gotten it wrong before, but he gets a hell of a lot more right than he does. And obviously, I love Jeff. In that leak, Days Gone is getting an HD remaster, right? It's getting a director's cut. Now, Days Gone was phenomenal. A lot of people didn't like it. I liked it. My only beef was that I had the same AK-47 40 hours into the game. I'm like, what am I doing wrong here, ladies and gentlemen? But what if that launches onto Xbox? Just saying, like, is it likely? No. But what if it does? What if it doesn't launch this December or whenever it's going to come out, but maybe at some point they're like, you know what? We're sitting on games here. We're not making any money. No one from PlayStation is buying these old games. Maybe people on Xbox. Oh, look, they did. They bought it in droves for $20. I'm sorry to say, folks, I get it that Sony isn't racing to put games on Xbox, and I don't need them there. I have a PS5. I have all those games. I own every single first-party PlayStation game. Am I a pony? No. But do I like games? Hell yeah, I do. And I like Sony's games. But it's business, folks. Whether you like it or you don't, things like this, Lego Horizon not selling on Switch, not selling on PlayStation, barely making a dent into Steam, is not good. So look, here's another example of that. This is how you know Sony needs to change direction. Horizon, the Horizon Dawn remaster just released as well. Currently in game, I just did the Steam DB check right live on the air. 1,112 people are playing this game. All-time 24-hour peak, 1,872 people. You know what the all-time 18 days ago peak was for new players and total players? 2,538. What they're doing is just not working. They need to make changes. And you know something, when it happens, all of these stout PlayStation fans that said it couldn't be, and that Herman Holtz is our leader, and F. Jim Ryan, he's out the door, you're going to see some big changes, and it starts specifically what's happening with Lego Horizon. Like I said, when you have Lego City Undercover having more all-time players and current players playing now today than a game that just released a couple of days ago, that's not good. It is just not good. But That's going to do it for us here today, Fuzzy. Listen, we had almost 500 people here. If you're finding the channel for the first time, you enjoyed the conversation, please consider subscribing. There's going to be some new content coming. I don't want to say what it is because I'm still putting it together in my head. I'm going to talk about it, soon enough. The 5 live shows we're still doing our thing. I'm still cutting the shows up into little more digestible videos that I put out there for people that don't have the time to sit and watch a 90-minute show. But I'm going to be doing some additional content, and I'll talk about that in the coming weeks of what exactly that content is going to be. But a big thank you to the super chat that popped in here. Of course, Scott Gamer, do appreciate the support. Anyone that is, of course, supporting the channel through channel membership, we do greatly appreciate that as well. Fuzzy Belvedere, let's sell your brand, brother, but not just your brand, which, of course, is the best place for anything and everything in the racing genre. His wife also launched a horror podcast that happens on Friday evenings around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time called Fright Night with Ferocious Fee. So we want you to obviously subscribe not only to her channel, but to Fuzzy Belvedere's as well. Fuzzy, where can they do that? And more importantly, follow both of you on social media.
As always, I love doing this podcast on
Thank you, sir.
Monday afternoons. Always love chatting with you on gaming stuff and catching some of the news that breaks over the weekend. It's so awesome to do this. Greatly appreciate everybody in the chat checking us out. I know they're doing like the unveils for the announcements, but thank you guys for taking the time to check us out. Greatly appreciate it. If you could, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. It's truly, truly appreciated if you do. For those that want to hear my rambles and rants on anything gaming related, just follow me on the app, formerly known as Twitter, at Fuzzy_Belvedere. Also find me on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, YouTube, obviously, and everywhere except for Facebook. That's the only one where I can't be Fuzzy Belvedere. I guess that's the main reason being. But other than that, if you have a interest in horror movies or horror video games, don't forget, follow my wife, Ferocious Fee 78 on Twitter, as well as on Blue Sky. She'll have an Instagram here soon where we can post some of the pictures from a lot of the conventions and stuff that we go to. The podcast is typically Friday nights at 6 p.m., but no show this weekend. Got to do a little bit of a family move from Tennessee to New Jersey this weekend. So a lot of craziness this weekend. But next Friday we'll definitely be back. We're going to have either Black Friday or a Thanksgiving themed movie to discuss. There is actually a Black Friday film and an actual Thanksgiving film. We haven't decided on which one. We might even wind up discussing both of them. So be on the lookout for that 2 Fridays from now at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll put the link in the chat for her YouTube channel. But thanks again so much to everybody that checked us out today. Greatly appreciate it. Man, it's awesome to be a gamer right now. Enjoy these games. I know there's a lot of people that don't seem like they enjoy them, but take the time, play the games, give games a try, especially if you're in Game Pass. All it does is cost you the time of the download unless you're able to play it via cloud streaming. But yeah, there is so much to play out there. Definitely partake. That's all.
Absolutely. Well, again, folks, if you enjoyed today's conversation, the 3 topics, please hit the like button on your way out the door. If you are feeling extra generous and you want to share this onto social media, we'd greatly appreciate it. Of course, for Fuzzy Belvedere and myself, we want to thank you again for taking the time to check out the show. And again, obviously, we launched the show today against Jeff Keighley and the Game Awards nominees. I'll go check that out. We're going to specifically cover what they are. I'm seeing some chatter in the chat. Obviously, Xbox didn't get any Game of the Year nods, which is, again, not surprising to me. Hellblade is a mastercraft game, but because it didn't appeal to a bunch of people, it's not going to get any credit. It just is what it is. The Game Awards has been for years coined as the PlayStation Awards, and the changes that went down prove our point exactly. I don't agree with some of the changes. Every year, it's the same thing. It's always new ways to get a Sony game in there. Oh, Sony doesn't have a like major IP this year. Oh, they're doing remasters. Let's do a remaster thing. It's just, we're going to break it down on Wednesday. I want to be able to digest it for the show. Dirk Griggity is going to be joining us, obviously, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, I'm going to close out the show with something that's incredibly important to me. Hopefully one day, folks, will be important to you. And that's something that my dad taught us when we were kids. And it would say, Craig, treat others how you want to be treated. And also, it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, son. I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. And we'll see you next week on the newest episode of the Xbox Lunch Break Special.